Hi, Henry here today with Mister Quik out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Today we're going to go over your switches throughout your home to tell the different types of switches and how to install and remove switching from boxes. We're going to start here with what we call a single switch. What that means is that we have one switch controlling one light or several lights, but it is not switched anywhere else. To know that it is a single switch, you're going to see the two screws on one side, and then on the other side you're not going to have any screws except for your grounding screw on the bottom here. Now when looking at a single switch, every switch is going to have a switch leg going up to a light or to a piece of equipment such as a garbage disposal, and then on the other side you're going to have a hot coming in. To be able to tell the difference, you can use your testers to see which side's bringing in power while the switch is off, or you can pull it apart and test it to another switch leg to see which one is your hot. The next switch we're going to move on to is a four-way switch. A four-way switch means that it is one light or more switched in over 3 locations. So to be able to tell that this is a four-way switch, you will notice that there is a gold and a black screw on one side, and it's going to look just the same on the other side. And the final switch that we will get into is your three-way switch. Now a three-way switch can either be 2 three-way switches that control one or more lights, or it can be in a series at the end of 4-way switches. To be able to tell if it is a 4-way switch, you will have 2 gold screws at the top, one on this side and one on the other side, and then your hot screw at the bottom, your black screw. Switching is obviously an important feature within your home. You want to have lights turn on and off whenever you turn something on. You want to know that it is coming on, so using the correct switch in the correct place with the correct type of wiring is very important. So learning the differences in your switches and how they function and what they're supposed to do is a key factor to turning on lights within your home. Now we're going to go over how switches work. So we'll go over every type of switch very quickly. The first switch, your single switch here, how it works is that your hot comes in here at the bottom, and then at the top your switch leg goes out. So the power shoots through a transfer bar, which is that gold plated bar behind the screws there, which you do not want to touch. And if you're ever taking apart a switch, always remember to turn the power off first or call a professional. So once you turn on that switch, your light will come on, and once you turn it off, it will go off due to the power transferring through that metal bar right there. The next switch we're going to go over is a 4-way switch. Now a 4-way switch is a little more complicated because it all runs off of transfer wires coming off of other 3-way switches or 4-way switches. So the way that this 4-way switch right here works, on the back of it you'll be able to read that it will say input and output. So you will have one set hooked up to the tops and one set to the bottoms, and your input will be coming from one side, so one 3-way, let's say over here. That will be your top, your input coming into it. And then on your bottom, it will be your output, which will be going to your final 3-way located on the other side of the room here. That way, all 3 of these switches control one set of lights. Now, hooking up these wires the proper way is important because if you hook them up backwards, say that you don't have the correct set on the right side, or they're mismatched, one set's got half of it hooked up with the other half, it won't work properly. One switch will come on and another switch won't turn it off, or they won't work in a cadence to where you can turn it off on one end but not be able to turn it on the other end. Now finally, your 3-way switches. Your 3-way switches work sort of just like a combination of your single and your 4-way switches. So you'll have your transfer wires coming in the top here, which talk to another switch to turn on and off a light. And then at the bottom, you'll either have a hot or you'll have your switch leg. So you'll either have a feed coming into the bottom like we do here, or you'll have your switch leg going up to the top. That way, when you have 2 sets of switches running one light, one side is powering the switches, the other side is powering up to the light, and they work in a cadence off of your top wires here talking to each other. Now we're going to go over the top 3 problems within your switching in your home. Problem number 1 that you will see, which is more common within your 3-way and your 4-way wire switches, is that your transfer wires, which on your 4-way switches, both sets of wires are hooked up in the wrong place. So for example, let's say if we had this black right here hooked up instead of where this black is at, the switch here would work and the switch on this side would work, but that switch would not be able to function its job properly. Another problem you will see pretty commonly here is when you have multiple hots hooked up to a single pole switch and you have your switch leg hooked up on the wrong side. So to take this switch leg off here and to put it on with that hot, it would leave it constantly on and it taking away the functioning of the switch as a whole, to where the switch could not turn it off because the switch leg is touching the hot on the same terminal screw. One of the third problems that you see with installing switches is over tightening the screws here. When you over tighten these terminal screws that hold the wires in place, it starts to crush and break these wires off at the copper point, and it will end up wearing down the switch, and sooner or later your light will start flickering or stop working completely, and you'll have to redo your work from before. So just until it's snug is just enough. To prevent these problems from happening, our first solution is always to call a professional such as Mister Quik out to your home to get everything fixed up the right way for you. The second way is whenever you're pulling out something and replacing it with new, just hook up the exact way that it was before. When in doubt, take a picture before you uninstall it and hook it back up the exact same way. And if you have issues from there on, you will just need to call a professional out to get your problem fixed for you. Some common signs that you need to replace the switching within your home. Firstly, now we are looking at a brand new switch here, but if you look at the toggle at the front of it, if it is starting to push in and become very loose to where it's not firm to click up and down and you can't hear that clicking sound, that's a sign that the spring within inside of it is starting to wear down and it will not properly function from there on. Another sign that you need to get your switch replaced is if you have older, thicker switches that are starting to crack on the outside. That will tend to happen on letting electricity out the front. Once that plastic starts breaking, it is metal behind that becomes a shock hazard. So when you're getting to the point where you're trying to replace your switches and you're trying to have a professional out, we always recommend Mister Quik because one, we carry a warranty on our work, and two, we've dealt with every scenario you could think of with switches. There are many types of switches. The older the switch is, the harder it is to match how to hook it back up with a newer switch because the offset screws and the terminal screws are in different locations. So to be able to figure out where your hot needs to go or your transfer wires need to go might not be as easy as being able to snap a picture and put a new one in. So calling Mister Quik out to get your work done with a warranty is always the best option.